In this video, I'm going to show you a little bit some of the ways that I can make the Layens style frames. I'll show you how to create the cutout blank pieces in another video. But in this video, I want to show you how I can go from having the blank pieces ready to go to finishing the frames and providing the stability that's needed for a foundationless Layens frame. A more complex frame type would be to use wire and then to melt wax foundation on top of it. But our design, the design that I like to use, is foundationless, and it lets me avoid messing with wire because I find it I don't think I would be able to reliably do it because I don't have a drill press for accuracy, and I don't know, maybe I'm just making excuses. I don't like wire and I'm kind of convinced that it's probably not the best thing for the bees. But you can research that and do your own. Now, the starting point for making a frame is we're going to have one top bar. It is, as you can see, I've cut it away, and I've also got just a table saw kerf down the middle. And we'll use that kerf to hold our the anchor points for the comb. What we'll do is we'll take a little paint stick like this, or alternatively, if you cut them shallow enough, you can take a little popsicle stick like this, drop them down in there. You want 2 popsicle sticks or 1 paint stick. I don't find it terribly important to go all the way to the edge, but you want to give the bees something so that when that's in place, glued in, they've got something to hang on. So they'll hang on this ridge line and start to draw their comb down from there. All right, so you start out with the top bar with the kerf. You've got the bottom bar, like so, and then you've got your 2 sides. Now, these were cut in 2 different ways. With this one, I built a little jig, and there's some irregularities on this, but it's a decent way. I use a dado blade in the table saw. What I'm able to do with the blade spinning here, it's a wide set of blades actually, and in that jig I'm able to push one end over, and the jig gives it support when I get to the other side, because if it doesn't have that support, then the production piece can tilt down, and then you'll find that this is not a smooth side. It's it's decreasing in its height. And here's the curve of the dado blade, and then I'd flip it over and push it through the same way and get relatively uniform sides. This one I did a little differently. I used a router, a table router, and I started the cut here, went in a little ways, and then I think what I did was to reverse it, and that was just to prevent the flyaway, to make a nice smooth cut. And I think I did the cuts in the other direction there after I made the initial cut here. So I made these 2 side pieces in 2 different ways, but they are they're done in the same way. The next question that you'll have is, do you want the we use a wooden dowel to support the comb. And here is an example of some comb that I pulled out of a hive at harvest last fall. And this is how it would look, except that on given enough time, they'll take it all the way down to the bottom. Now, I've had people say they won't draw it straight, and I think you can see that this is pretty straight. It's not perfect, but it's pretty straight. I've heard people say they won't incorporate this dowel. Mine incorporate the dowel all the time. The only time they don't is if my hive is built with enough lean so that straight causes the comb to be drawn down at an angle, and then they'll miss that dowel, not because they don't like the dowel, but because the comb is the hive is not level. So I've had plenty of these where where they'll fill the whole frame. They're attached to the sides. Everything is good. So I think the drawbacks that have been articulated about this, they are generally more of a failure of leveling the hive than a failure of the frame design. The other thing that is noteworthy about this is when I have hives or frames like this that are fully drawn out, I noticed a pattern that on those frames, the bees tended to keep their brood area down here and to fill all of this with honey. And so when you're pulling frames at harvest going into winter, that means that if you've got brood on here, they are able to access all of that food all winter long. They just move the cluster from the bottom to the top, and instead of having, I've seen a lot of Langstroth frames and even some Layens frames that will only have an inch or two at the top, and I like having 3 inches or more over the top. And to have this, that's what, about 6.5 inches almost, I think. That certainly is going to be enough food for almost any weather climate, I believe, winter climate, I believe. So I count that as an advantage to the horizontal frame. The other option is, instead of putting it horizontally, and you can throw in two, you can divide it into thirds instead of half. But the other alternative is you might want to put your dowel vertically. And there you can also do that either in half or in thirds, depending on how much support you think you need. And what the bees tend to do there is to draw more uniformly from top to bottom in each of those 3 sections. And once again, I've heard people say that if you use the dowels instead of wire, they're not going to incorporate the support into the comb. And I just find that not to be my experience. Last year I went almost exclusively, I had a few of the vertical ones that I tried out, but I went almost exclusively for most of them with this way, just because I thought it was a little easier to cut the side, to drill holes in the sidebar. It also uses slightly less dowel, but a 4-foot dowel of this size at my local big box store is less than $1. And so it's going to make probably at least 3. So you're looking at about 30 cents or so of the for the support if you just have one dowel in either direction. If you add 2, then the cost goes up a little bit. But I think that 1 seems to me to be sufficient. So that's what I'm going to be making. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of how you would, starting with these pieces, how you would prepare for the dowel, how you will insert the dowel, and how you would provide the anchor points for the bees to hang from. All right, so I don't have a drill press. I don't have very much fancy equipment. I have a table saw and hand tools. And so let me show you. First, we're going to make a horizontal frame. So with a horizontal dowel, you want to take your 2 sidebars, and you're going to drop them onto some template. And so with this piece, I have marked that when I align the sidebars to this end of the 2x4, I'm going to get this out to the edge where I can clamp it nicely, that this line is my midway point, which still seems about right. And so I'm going to I've got this is underneath here, I've got a drill guide that has different holes for different bit sizes. This is the hole for the size bit that I need. So I'm going to align this to the mark on my template to get these more or less centered. Should be just a fraction of an inch off, if any at all. Then I'm going to take some clamps, and you can use any kind of clamp you want. And I'm holding this carefully to make sure nothing slips, so that I should be drilling straight through both of those sidebars. And then I'm going to clamp these down tight. And then it's just a matter of drilling until it penetrates all the way through both of the, so it'll go through the hole in this, it'll go through a drilled out hole in this bar, it'll go through these two sidebars, and I can drop it down. That's where it's starting on the sidebars, so I just need to penetrate down through those two sidebars. One, two. All right. Now, it's a simple process. The only problem with making frames yourself is it just can get tedious, because you end up having to do this hundreds of times. However, there are our frames with the holes. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you. So now you can see we have a complete layout here. So this is the way it's going to go together, and I have a jig that will help me glue this up, but I'm not going to glue it yet. I may get to that, or that may be a video for another day. But that's how the frame will look. And then, I am going to do that, time permitting, because I have to get it nailed together in order to show you putting the dowel through there. Although I can give you the basic idea just by, we would just put it through here, put a dot of wood glue. I use Type Bond 3 in each of the holes, and then fit the dowel in there, stand it up, and let it dry. All right, so that is how we make one with the horizontal. Now I'm going to pull out the pieces for another. All right, let me get my best couple of, I've got some sidebars with some flaws here. Let me, unfortunately, in this batch that I prepared, I've already glued up so many frames that I tend to start with the best pieces first. All right, so here's the next set that I'm going to do. Although I don't need to drill those, now what I've got to do is take one of the top bars and one of the bottom bars, and I want to go through the top bar and just barely into the bottom. So now I want to double check my marks here. I want to make sure that I'm gluing straight, or drilling at the center point. So I'm going to measure just the center piece, or the center portion of the top bar and the bottom bar are the same length, and it's basically 12 and 3/8, not quite 12 and a half. So so now that should be 6. Let's see. Okay, I found the right mark here. So I'm going to position this where I can see the marker. I'm going to take this. And you can get more elaborate with this. You can make a jig to fit it in place and just drill it. I just haven't gotten that mechanized yet. So I'm going to align my drill guide with the appropriate hole. Then I'm going to clamp it on both sides. And I am doing both of these pieces at the same time. That will mean that I have to be careful, because I do not want to go all the way through the top bar. I just want to go just a little ways through. So here we go. Okay, so I just felt it go through the bottom bar, and now I just need to go a little bit further. Hopefully, I had a deft touch and was able to do that. So straight through the bottom bar, and just slightly, just an indentation here in the top bar. And so what we're going to do here is we would run the dowel from that hole all the way down to the bottom board. Actually, I'll have it inverted instead. So I'll have glue here. It'll be already nailed together, and I'll run the dowel from here up here. All right, I'm going to pause now, and I'll move stuff around to get my jig ready, and we'll nail those two up. Okay, so this is the frame assembly jig, and I should move this drill out of the way so we don't cause any problems with that. Sorry, I do this work in my garage, which is crowded and cramped. All right, so for the assembly, we're going to start down here. We're going to put this at the top. We're going to fit our two sidebars like so. And then we will fit this. Now, sometimes you have to pull it out a little bit to fit it and slide it back in. That's what's going to be needed right here. There you go. So I get it fitted at the top, and then I push it down on the bottom. Make sure everything is aligned right. And then before I'm going to use a pneumatic staple gun to run staples in from the top, in from the sides, and in from the sides down here. But before we do that, we're going to have glue in this joint and glue in that joint. And because this is the one that I'm going to install vertically, I'll need to make sure that this piece is turned properly to do that. So I'm going to break it back apart. And I am going to first take just a little dab of glue. Now, it's easy to use too much glue. So what I'm doing lately is I get a little bit of glue on there, and then I smooth it in, get it to the edges, and give it a little bit of time to soak into that end grain. Because glue on end grain is a little harder to get the bond strength that you want, or at least so I'm told. By the way, I'm a beekeeper, not a carpenter. And so if you're critiquing my parts preparation or my methods or any of that, I am sorry. I know it can probably be done better. I'm just not the one to do it right now. Hopefully my skills will improve. All right, so that piece. Now I'm not going to glue the other piece as well. I'm just going to use the glue that's there to adhere to the other piece. I'm going to do kind of the same thing here, put a little glue in place. By the way, the jig that I'm using is available from horizontalhive.com, which is Dr. Leo Sharaskin's site. I'm using this with very little modification. so you can get the plans for how to make the jig, how to make it fit a Layens frame. It's all there for free. All right, so I've got the glue here. Let me wipe the excess glue off and let my little paint stick dry a bit. All right, so now I'm going to pull these out. And push them in there. And then I'm going to push this one, checking to make sure the alignment of the hole. I'm going to hold it down there on the end. I'm going to spread this other bar apart. And there, everything, it looks like I had a part of my jig fell apart and I had to glue it back, and it looks like now it's a little more loose than I'd like for it to be, but it'll be all right. It'll be all right. If the pieces are cut straight, then that's all we'll need. So for the next step, I'm going to have to use that nailer. It's going to be loud. On the video, I will try to to lower the volume for you. Okay, so now the chamber is filled and I'm ready to nail. So make sure that everything is still in alignment. I'm going to come in at an angle here, and actually first I'm going to go in from the top. Let me turn this camera just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so we're going to go in from the top right here. Try to get it nicely angled and aligned. Come down here. Now you can do this with hammer and nails. It's just a lot more time and trouble. Okay, and that is our frame. Now, there is a matter of, usually there's a little bit of squeeze out glue, and if you're not careful, it's going to build up into a little mound there as one layer after another dries. So you'll want to be sure and wipe that away. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to get the dowels. I'm going to size it first, and then just trim it off. And then we're going to take a drop of glue right there in the hole in the top bar. And I'm going to drop it in and twist it, spin it a little bit, and then I'm going to put a drop of glue on the top of the bottom bar, or the bottom of the bottom bar. And likewise spin it around. That gives the glue a chance to fill crevices there between the top or bottom bar and the dowel. And then the next thing is to get a couple of the, and now in this one, I think I'm going to use the popsicle stick. And the reason for doing that, the reason for deciding to use the popsicle sticks instead of the paint sticks. By the way, these are sold as paint stirrer sticks at the big box stores. They're designed for stirring paint in like the quart or not the quart pint paint jars. So for small jobs. But as you can see, this one is too big to fit down in there. So I'm going to use these instead. They're a little smaller. And all I'm doing here is I'm going to put a couple little dots of glue. Doesn't take much for each stick. And I'm going to use 2 sticks, one for each side. And the only criteria is your kerf cut has to be shallow enough so that the stick stands out. So the stick stands out just a little bit. Doesn't take much. And that frame is done. So I can set it down on any level surface to let all the glue spots dry. All right, now let's real quickly do one more. This one for the horizontal system. So I'm going to turn this back around for ease of positioning. All right, and there's the top. Here's our bottom. And here are our 2 sides. And we will be able to drop this in here, this in here, and then here. So same procedure until we get it stapled in. All right, so I'm going to put a little glue on the end and smooth it. And then go to the other side. Put a little glue in on the end and smooth it. And then, I don't know if I didn't call it out, but I don't know if you noticed, I positioned it so that if it drips, it doesn't drip onto my jig. All right, then we'll leave the sidebars alone for the moment. We'll do a little bit of glue here. And then a little bit of glue here. And then do a little smoothing, just like we did before. And I've got more glue on there than I intended, so I have a little squeeze out that I'll have to be careful about. All right, I don't like too much glue, but I'd rather have too much glue than not enough glue. I'm a little picky, I suppose. All right, so now with the sidebars in place on the top bar, we come down here and spread the sidebars. insert the bottom bar. Now sometimes you'll have to actually angle it, insert it, and then squeeze it into place, which is what I just had to do. I want to make sure everything is as square as I can get it. Here comes the air compressor again. Okay, and so now we have our second frame. All right, let me clean up a little bit. Should have brought a rag out here for this. I usually try to keep one around for just such a purpose, but I did not today. All right, so now I can put the jig away because I'm not gonna be doing more, at least not immediately. All right, so now we are ready to fit a dowel. Let's see if this one will fit, and I believe it will. Fit it through here. It was not quite halfway, but it's not bad. And I could probably trim just a smidge more off of one end, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you're not familiar with the term just a smidge, that is a term for precision measurements here in Texas. I realize it's a somewhat selective vocabulary. All right. I could start with the hole, or I can do it right here. Since I've got it in my hand, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the dowel, and then insert it into the dowel into the sidebar on one side. And then, kind of as I did before, I'm going to fit it to the hole on the other side. And now I've got a finger at the bottom, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue here at the top. It was a little more than I intended. I'm going to recess it a little bit. Try to get that glue rather fully in the hole. And put a finger on that side. Come back and do the same up here. Just try to use up the glue that I've got on my finger. Just spin them a little bit. All right. And then the only thing left is the little header for the bees to work on. And I could do two of the popsicle sticks, or I can do one of the paint sticks. One of the paint sticks is usually sufficient. I think that's the paint sticks. That is my preference over the popsicle sticks, but narrowly. And when I'm making the vertical supports, it's really only the popsicle sticks that is appropriate for the size of the task. All right, that's all for right now. Here are my Layens frames. In a later video, I'll show you how I cut the parts for the Layens frame, but there it is.